Hello and welcome to the Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Richey of the MHRT Network. Down below that away, you have Jack representing his Las Vegas Raiders. Jack, thank you for joining the show again. Always great having you here to get us some information on those Raiders. Over this away, I'm doing things in reverse order just to mess with you guys because it's fun. Over that away is the real Alex Givens, not the fake one. You get your stuff over on Arrowhead Addict, and coming up in just a few short weeks, I would imagine, you and Coach will be spinning back up the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast. You can catch that over on the Lockdown Defense. Search that up on the YouTube. Or if you'd like to know how to find Alex and Coach, you can reach out to me on X or Twitter, wherever you want to call it. At this point here, I think the two names are completely interchangeable. And we will go ahead and get you the link to that channel so you can catch Alex when they go live for the Fantasy Podcast, because who doesn't like a good, solid fantasy league as well as some information? And joining the show for the second time is DZ. DZ, I love having you here. Love you in the comments. And yes, I realize that in the U.S. The letter is meant to be Z. However, I'm Canadian. I refuse to change. So it's DZ, and that's
isn't it the same in Australia and the UK as well?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So I'm just I'm gonna go Queen's English here, and we're just gonna all agree for the time being. And just as long as we can also agree that sandwiches without crust are just retarded. But anyways,
I don't know, man. Uncrustables are pretty good. Just saying.
That's unfortunate. I think you may
it's
have
the whole
premise. You may have just lost the whole Stars and Stripes thing with that comment, but we'll go from there. anyways, so as we look ahead, we're starting to get into some really interesting times for all of our teams. Camp is starting. They're going to start getting the veterans starting to come into camp, although right now most of us just have rookies at camp to kind of kick things off, or rookies for free agents, that kind of stuff that are all there. And then the vets will start joining them in short order. Some of you may have veterans there, some of you won't. Broncos aren't going to have that start for a little bit. But right now we had some interesting stuff come out in camp, some cool things, some interesting stuff. So I'm going to throw over to finally get some Chargers information here spewed on the show. I'm going to throw over you, DZ, get some information from your Chargers. Just to kind of give you a bit of a preemptive component there, I did note that at least one of your players had what appeared to be a hand injury.
DJ Chark. Yeah. I think there's a guy I follow on Twitter. I think he was there and actually was filming him, and it looked like he had I'm not a doctor. It looked like he had a dislocated finger. Which with our receiving cores, that's not good right now. But look, that's the least of our worries, I think, right now is a little finger injury. But camp started today. I think they just went through the paces they picked up from OTAs, essentially. Everybody was there minus two players. Carson Barnhart, I believe, and Junior Colson. Barnhart, I don't know what his deal is, but it's not a huge issue. He's projected to be a backup. But Colson, my favorite pick of this draft, he had appendectomy. So he had his appendix removed, which is actually a sigh of relief for all fans, believe it or not, even though that sounds horrible. Because when he went down, I believe like day 2 in OTAs, the whole fan base was like, oh my God, here we go again. And luckily it's that. So we don't know when he got his surgery. Harbaugh was like, with his pressers, has been pretty like he abides by HIPAA laws, so he doesn't say much. He doesn't give away much. But from what I'm hearing, it's about a month. So I expect to see him, and he'll probably get some preseason action, probably week 2, 3 or something like that. That's my assumption as a fanalist. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if he had the appendix out, it would have been within a day or so after he went down.
Yeah,
So
it's
I
quick.
think, like,
Yeah.
I actually have a very good buddy of mine who had his appendix burst when we were in high school together.
She.
To give you context, he's very much like me, which is, rub some dirt on it, you'll be fine.
In the
He
same way.
He ignored it for almost too long, and he got to a point where he collapsed and was rushed to the hospital, and he almost went septic. So these NFL players are under basically they're under command from the doctors. Like when he went down there and practiced there, I 100% guarantee you he was checked out and given a full physical when he went down in pain, and he would have been found out to have the appendix problem probably within a day, and probably would have been in for surgery the day after, given kind of the way things were.
Supposedly he called his mother, which is kind of weird. That Harbaugh, I don't know if you guys have heard him talk, but the way he talks is different from a lot of coaches out there. But he said supposedly he called his mother, so I don't know if his mother has like a doctor or nursing background. So she was the one who was like, "Okay, you need to get like going to the doctors," and I'm sure he took the advice. So is that saying something about the Chargers training staff? Hey, I don't know.
It's a good thing you didn't call Richie.
Yeah, rub some dirt on it. I mean, he's pivotal.
Tough it out.
He's pivotal in this Minter defense. So, but yeah, he's a rook. So they got some guys that fill in: Troy Dye, Perryman, Jack Nose Perryman, things like that. But I'm sure he'll be out there sooner than later.
Yeah, no, when you have an appendix problem like that, especially when someone's brought to the hospital. She probably was. No, seriously, she probably was.
This guy's passed out. Who do we call?
Yeah.
What do you put in HR as emergency contact? Hit that.
Yeah. Spin that speed dial up. But that's probably what happened. And honestly, with an appendix problem, the good news is it is so routine at this point that with the new surgeries they actually have for the appendix removal, the incisions are a fraction of what they used to be, even from a recovery perspective. So I actually think that I agree with you. Way better that it was something like that other than something far more serious.
Right.
And the recovery timeline on those sorts of things is going to be a handful of weeks, which is basically how fast can the wound and stitches heal.
Harbaugh did say something at his presser that I thought was like kind of like neat and obvious. That he said that, if guys are going down right now, like if they're going down in OTAs or right now, which is, I don't believe they don't put on pads till I believe this upcoming Wednesday. He's like, those are long injuries. Like those guys will be down for months to 6 months. So when he said that, I was like, oh God, like, but luckily he talked about Coulson before that. So I'm like, please nobody go down right now. But luckily nobody has. He's not wanting anybody. I know you were talking, but he's not wanting anybody from what he said in his pressers to even go to the ground right now. Like he doesn't want receivers trying to make, catches above people's heads or go to the ground for catches. He's telling everybody to settle down. Right now, apparently he's just waiting for pads, and then he's like, I guess it's full bore from there. So, you're seeing these highlight stuff. So apparently we're not going to be seeing any highlights from Charger camp, which I'm just kidding, but that's essentially like everybody, oh my God, did you see so-and-so make a catch? And now it's like posted all over NFL Network. But, anyways.
Well, at least you're going to have your fans in your camp. Your Chargers and the Rams blocked all our fans coming out.
Well, look, the Saints in Dallas. I don't know if Dallas has fans in California. I don't know. I'm not sure.
They did. They're grandfathered in, is what it is. Since the Raiders left, California, now they gave up the rights, and I think it's a 75-mile radius, and so they're within that radius.
Yeah,
I just think I hate to say it. The Chargers and the Rams are like afraid that we're going to take over again, just like we did during games.
I mean, luckily, and this isn't a knock on this show, but I think I said this in the chat last week. Like, I wish more Charger fans would come to the show, because to me, I loved it, getting the perspective from our division. But there's so many of these other shows that just pump this constant gluck for the Charger narrative. I'm like, God, I can't listen to this Disney stuff anymore. So like that's what attracted me to this show. But Raiders fan base is absolutely massive. They're the Bills of the West Coast. Like, their fan base is humongous. Their fan base in California is well established, and northern, southern, wherever, their fan base is throughout the country. So yeah, I mean, it's smart on the owners. They're like, no, keep them the hell out. And I'd do the same thing, man. I'd be like, nope. I would be like, I'd try to black out. I'd probably, do anything I could to keep them from getting any foothold back in LA. But, what can you do, right?
What can you do? It kills me. It's like, doing so many other Raider shows, like you're hopping into chats, just like you, DZ. So first of all, welcome aboard. It's nice to meet
Thanks,
you.
man. Yeah, man.
I'm glad you're here. But yeah, like talking to other Raider fans, it's going to be, unless you're seeing what's being posted on the news, it's like you want to hear from the other fans, what they're seeing and what they're hearing.
Yeah.
It just helps you give better content and so forth. So I'm like, that's a bummer.
I mean, I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. I've been a Chargers fan, and I don't say since birth. I say it from when I could comprehend what was going on the TV, and I say that when I was like 7 years old, 6 to 7 years old, and that was, I believe, 91 season, and that's when my head was like, oh, okay, this is what's going on, and then that's my team, and I grew up in San Diego, North County, but yeah, like when you're young and in your 20s, you're like, F that team, blah blah blah, and that's fine, man. I love the friendly banter back and forth during the season, but sometimes I want to know like what's going on with so and so, and like get honest, for the most part, explanation.
Exactly. And DZ, I agree with you. That attracted me to this show too, is because keep your your friends close, your enemies closer, and it just to give like
Bingo, exactly.
honest perspectives, and it's just not it's fun talk, but it's not just anger talk, and it's like it's a respectful show, and that's what I tell all my friends that I talk to.
Yeah, I mean, Captain Jack and Robert, that was getting spicy for a minute, and that was some pure good entertainment right there. But for the most part, like it's pretty chill on this show with some funny stuff from the chats. A lot of times from the Raider chat, they're pretty good.
Yeah, but so when we're looking at where you guys are at, fans or no fans, or relocation, no relocation, whatever you want to kind of say there, your team has got obviously a new feel to it with the coaching, the coaching change and whatnot. That's to be expected. I mean, I need look no further than my own team to kind of see the difference in how the press conferences have gone between Nathaniel Hackett, who is gee whiz, golly, how you doing, to Sean Payton, who's like, I'm not telling you that. Next question. Like
Brady-esque, or no, Belichick-esque kind of, or they just
Belichick was never as brazen as Sean Payton is with the press. Like Sean Payton, I literally just finished watching the last two pressers.
Stupid question. Next question.
Yeah,
Belichick buttered up his opponents, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah.
Every time we play the Patriots, I don't think we ever won. I think we won once last year or something. Anyways, but every time we'd play him, I'd always look forward to the Belichick pressers, because he would be like, so-and-so on the Chargers, oh my God, he's the best player. He's so good in this. And then come that Sunday, proceed to beat the bejesus out of us.
And I'm like, that guy.
And I'd always watch him. Like, we knew Hunter Henry was going to be a Patriot, because every time we played him, Belichick was always on Hunter Henry after the games. And I'm like, oh, well, there you go.
He just fit the prototype. you know.
Yeah, so I would argue that you have a Harbaugh is kind of between Belichick and Peyton a little bit, from what I can tell from his pressers.
Yeah, I'm still getting to know Harbaugh, and I remember him when I was a kid. And I remember a lot of stuff about him, but I'll be honest, I'm not that big into the college scene, which I think I'll be getting into more. I didn't
College
go to
football's
college.
out. Video
Yeah,
game.
my chick did go to college, but she went to one school that didn't have a football team, and then she got her master's at Maryland, and they have a football team. They're not the best, but they do produce some talent. But Harbaugh is, right now with the Chargers. For me, it's excitement, but it's the unknown, man. I have no clue what to expect. Like, I've watched so much film on Minter's defense, Greg Roman's offense, Jim in San Francisco, and there's one variable out of all of this right now, and it's Justin Herbert. I don't know how this is all going to tie together. Like, and I don't know. I'm excited, but the thing is week one, like, I'm the one person who isn't ragging on the Raiders. I'm like, out of the Charger fans, I'm like, dude, this team's stacked right now, and they beat the brakes off us. And you could say, hey, that team quit on their coach and all that stuff, but that's going to be a hell of a test week one, and only got a few weeks until that. So,
Well, I can tell you a little bit about Harbaugh. Harbaugh used to play for the Raiders. He was a QB. He
Yep.
was a QB coach.
he's friends
And
with, I believe,
and
Mark
being in
Davis,
Northern
right?
California, with him doing the Niners, he pulls the best out of his players. That's for sure. I mean, he's intense, but from what everything I've heard, like when the Raiders were thinking about him and stuff like that, Northern California news and stuff. It's like he'll burn you out after about 4 years.
That's what I'm hearing. I
So-
think he's here to try to get him a Super Bowl and then get out. I honestly think, which, look, that'd be great. We don't have a Super Bowl, so we don't have a ring. So I think he's trying to get us a Super Bowl and then could walk off in the sunset. You know what I mean? Like, he wants to accomplish everything. And he's 60 years old, I believe. So he's not. Andy Reid's what? And it just got 70.
Yeah, he's up there a little bit. Yeah,
But
71.
everything I'm seeing from Harbaugh, he's talking kind of differently than he did like in the past, and I think that's because he's 60 years old now. I don't know. So maybe he won't wear off, but I do like the coaching staff he brought in. He brought in a hell of a coaching staff. A lot of guys with some pretty good resumes. But yeah.
So we haven't had, like I said, the Chargers perspective on here for a couple weeks. So I think this is just a good opportunity for the fans here of the show to kind of get some additional information here.
Yeah, man.
As you're going through camp and obviously the OTAs and stuff prior to that, have there been any reports, or are there any glaring players that you think might surprise in terms of ones that may have not looked good under Staley that will look good under Harbaugh? So that'd be kind of part A, and then part B. And this is just a natural. By the way, I had the similar comments when Peyton was brought in, and I was asked these questions by a bunch of different podcasters as well. Right? Some of them I got right, some of them I got wrong, and that's cool. But I think trying to be objective and analyze your team is kind of part of the fun of assessing and sharpening your skills as you're actually getting deeper into the game of football and actually learning more of those ins and outs. So the second part of that is, who do you think would be a surprise to a lot of Chargers fans that people think is so system agnostic, but you're looking at it saying, dude, I think he's gone after this year?
Wow, that's kind of tough because I'm kind of the opposite of that. I feel like he's going to purge some of these Staley and Telesco picks from the team if it's not a huge money issue. I think the O-line, they did not perform. Like, didn't everybody pick last year the Chargers have the best O-line in the AFC West, and that backfired greatly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one group as a whole that could really do wonders, but we'll see. as one player, maybe Derwin James, but I think a lot of fans are expecting that with Minter.
I got a question. Since you mentioned O-line, drafting Joe Alt with the number 5 pick, do you see him staying on the right side or do you see him sliding over on the left side?
So my conspiracy brain is thinking, well, they haven't paid Slater yet. And Christian Darrisaw in his same class just got the bag. Good for him. And I'm like, what's going on? Are they going to let him walk, which would be incredibly stupid? But, this is a new thinking. Ortiz came from the Ravens, and their deal in Baltimore was letting guys walk because they had a replacement for that player the next season. That's what they're doing in Baltimore this year. Everybody is talking about the Ravens losing all these defensive players. They have guys to fill those positions that they like. That's just the way they run in Baltimore. So now, God, I don't know if it was on Coach's show last night. Somebody's talking about Joel on the right side, like he looks like a duck out of water or something. And I'm like, that's not what I'm hearing in camp. I'm hearing that he is an athlete. Like this dude is like he knows what he's doing. Like it's just luckily he didn't play left tackle so long that I don't think it's such a huge transition. But look, Slater did play right tackle. Joel never played right tackle. So it would make sense to like swap them. But
it's more than that though. Slater didn't just play right tackle. Like Slater didn't just play right tackle. He was literally the number 1 right tackle prospect in his draft class.
Right.
And it may not have been close. And it may not have been close.
No,
and they switched him to left. Yeah.
And they switched him to left, and he did fantastic. Like there's some growing pains and there's some bumps and bruises, but he did fan-freaking-tastic. I remember, and it makes sense, but a lot of fans got off on this part where he was like, please don't chip. Let me do this by myself. People are like, oh, yeah, because he's a badass. Well, sometimes chipping can be an issue. Like, that could affect that left tackle. Like, sometimes one-on-one is a lot easier for him. But he was great. He had a down year. He was going through injuries last year, which a lot of players happens to. So I have faith in Alt at right tackle just due to his DNA, who his father was, like the coaching staff they have. I believe they have the O-line coach from Notre Dame right now in with LA. Or
that's a good question. I should know that.
So this is Coach. I am too, but that's why I'm thinking that they do a lot of tight end help.
Yeah.
Because I don't think swapping Slater to the right, especially contracts, like I don't think it's going to work. Like they're like, you're at a right tackle, buddy, and he's probably accepted his fate for now, and he'll be the right tackle. But yeah, there's concerns, big time concerns. Max Crosby, week 1, baby. Here we come.
I think you're right, though, in that it's like a security blanket for if Slater doesn't work out with contracts, right? Because, obviously he's going to see what Darrisaw got and be like, well, I've put up better accolades than he has. I want more. And,
elite O-linemen don't grow on trees. Like
no. But at the same time, it doesn't hurt to have 2 elite left tackles with one playing right. And if that guy, for whatever reason, the money doesn't work out, you're not really missing much.
Yeah, this is a Harbaugh'ism, but he did say, he's like, if I could have an O-line made up of all tackles, I would. So I'm like,
that'd be nice.
But some people really love that prototypical guard, that kind of smaller ball-like of a man, monster. And we'll see, because we have our right tackle who is not a Charger fan, not a Charger favorite, Trey Pipkins. He's our longest tenured O-lineman right now. He is going to be the right guard. So you're going to have him. He's never played right guard next to a guy who's never played right tackle. Come week 1 against Wilkinson and Crosby. This should be interesting. Like,
grab your popcorn.
Grab your popcorn or your barful.
There have been plenty of right tackles that have made above average transitions to guards. And both left and right, although typically it's right tackle to right guard and then left tackle to left guard. And there are numerous examples of, we'll call them below average tackles, but they still have the footwork of a tackle, but they maybe were a little slow for the tackle spot, or perhaps didn't have the bend that they needed at the tackle spot in order
the
to.
bend is huge, what you just said. Bend and footwork is everything, in my opinion.
Yeah. And so they may not have those sorts of things, but guess what? They had the football IQ, and they had the technique of one side versus the other. And they transitioned to guard. They almost became elite level guards because of the fact that they had the speed that a lot of other guards don't have. And so they were able to both move guys off the ball because they were used to doing things in the run game, but they also had the footwork and the competency, football IQ, if you will, to keep guys like Crosby, who are they will go from the outside to rush inside to try to throw you off your game. And let's just be honest, Crosby's probably the one of, if not the best in the NFL right now for that move. Rush from the outside, go inside, and then beat the guard, like just make him look silly in some cases, and win. Well, if you have a dude that is used to playing tackle and used to only going against speed rushers with hand and bend, and then going against guys where he has someone on his right but doesn't need and doesn't have as much space, more of a phone booth, someone like that could do exceptionally well for you, and you might be quite surprised at the success that someone who was good but not great has in moving to the inside, who will actually look good.
I agree. I think every fan we're hoping, here's to hoping. But like I said with Slater, the ups and downs, the roller coaster, the bumps and bruises, I'm sure we're going to have that. And everybody's going to overreact and be like, oh my God, did they make a huge mistake putting him at right tackle? But like I said, I think his genetic makeup, his DNA, and the program he came from, I think he'll be fine. Just, I'm not going to overreact. You know what I mean? Like, we'll see. Now, if he gives up 9 sacks like Pipkin did, then yeah, we're going to have major red flags.
Well, that's not going to happen. But that's why I asked the question, because, Alta, a bigger guy, he's got longer arms. And that's one of the things where if you get some tackles that are out there, if you don't have long arms to fight off the hand blocking and everything else, then they get moved into guard. Yeah. Slater's got a little bit shorter of arms, shorter guy. And again, since he played it in college, I just thought that's why I keep asking the question, for Charge fans, in the way the switch, because he's natural. You get these players back in their natural positions, and he's already done a, all pro job at left tackle. Going back to his right should be even easier.
Well, maybe that will be something that happens, because that wouldn't surprise me with Harbaugh. But I expect Slater to be like, pay me like a left tackle, and if you want me to move to right, then so be it. But I'm going to get my bag first, and rightfully he should. I mean, he's a young stud too. Like, this kid, he's a beast. And yeah, he doesn't have the big arms. He doesn't have that prototypical, like, super big frame, super long arms, but he's still a beast.
He front squat 605, so.
I watched that guy lock up Myles Garrett. I've watched him lock up many of the premier edge rushers. And, like, I believe it wasn't last year. I think it might have been the year before. They were running everything behind him. And that's when we had some, like, resemblance of a run game. And it went all to that left side. And then last year we had no run game, and nothing worked. But he was dealing with, I believe, a high ankle sprain, which it is what it is.
You're also not factoring in, and I think this is also a huge factor here as well. Slater's just coming up to his contract. Now, and Alt is just entering the league. So when you're looking at, and Herbert has already been signed to his extension and whatnot. So you're in kind of the big ticket items, if you will, where your left tackle hasn't been paid yet, because you don't really have, like, Slater is your left tackle. But I'm just saying is that if you were to move Alt back over to the left, you got him locked on that rookie contract deal, which is a nice fixed contract for you guys for that position, especially if he turns out well. And then if Slater is to move to the right side, you can pay him like a left tackle if you so chose to do so, because you don't have Alt making that elite left tackle money. And you can start offsetting some of these contracts based on when you've drafted them and what position groups you're paying versus not.
Sure. Yeah. I agree.
So I think that's another thing that I think is important to kind of play out and note there.
To be real quick on the O-line, to be honest with you, I'm not worried about Slater or Alt, like even all that right tackle. Like I say, like, yeah, he's going to have some issues. I mean, I believe in the first 3 weeks, it's Crosby and TJ Watt. Like, yeah, that's going to give anybody problems.
Yeah.
But I'm more concerned
You'll see Crosby go against Alt because Crosby plays on your right side.
Yeah, that's why I'm repeating that ad nauseum, because I'm like, I want people who know, like, hey, look, man, it's not going to be pretty.
He's going to be tested early.
I believe Alt is the largest. They say he's the tallest guy in the NFL right now, but I thought Donald Parham is larger than him, so I'm not sure. It's a tight end. I don't think will make it, but I think he will make it. But I don't think he's a Harbaugh guy. But real quick, go back to O-line, I'm more concerned with our center and our two guards. Zion Johnson has not played like a first-round guard. Bozeman arguably had his worst year last year in Carolina, and Trey Pipkins is playing right guard for his first time. So that interior, if they don't get it together quick, it's going to be an issue because they want to run the ball. And if you can't run the ball up the middle, then I don't know what you're going to do. We don't really have, JK's got one leg right now. We don't know if he's fully healed, and Gus Edwards is not the type of guy to bounce it to the outside, So
speaking real quick on running backs, because that's a natural transition right there, offensive line to running backs. Obviously, we know Harbaugh wants to run the ball. Your offensive coordinator and offensive scheme and the folks you brought in are huge proponents of running the football. From news out of camp today, where are you guys at in the run game? Is there positivity from that front? Is there concern?
There is some positivity because Charger fans have been so used to Austin Eckler being the guy, right? And so he's been a little muscle hamster, kind of like that Maurice Jones-Drew style forever. And they saw Gus Edwards up and close, and they're like, Jesus, he's huge. And so that's like the main thing everybody saw today. Like, he's massive. And then so him and JK were working together. And I think that's like your 1 and 2. But I got a feeling that they work JK in slow. Like, I don't think we see him right at the start. Like, I think they'll try to get Spiller going or Kimani, Vidal. There's so many different ways. I think it's Vidal instead of Vidal. That's a guy I'm really looking forward to seeing is Kimani. He did play, I believe, in the MAC, right? That was the MAC. So, but he killed it. He killed it. I mean, his stats. I
think he's the all-time leading rusher.
But I mean, people are like, it was the MAC. So, I mean, look, Austin Eckler was a UDFA from Western Colorado.
D2.
So, if this guy, can make it, he looks to be like the real deal, a real good change of pace back. But I think we're really banking on Gus and JK. And if JK can show any resemblance to, I believe, his 22 season or his, some flashes of Ohio State, I'm feeling pretty good about it. But, that's a lot to ask, especially guys that are getting older with an Achilles injury. But he says he's healthy, but that could all be talk. You know what I mean? We'll see when the pads strap up and somebody's thumping him on the other side.
Yeah, I agree. So changing teams here, we'll flip over to my Denver Broncos because it's a pretty, I don't say boring, but it's straightforward because there was limited information that came out, but interesting information that came out as well. And I think it certainly sparks an interesting conversation. So we had our own version of Weird Ali Yankovic, otherwise known as Greg Dulcich, who was back on the field and did actually look quite good. But as your header there indicates, we are talking about the Underwear Olympics at this point. These are not
to look good.
Yeah, like it's very difficult to look bad when you're not wearing pads and someone else is not hitting you. And so I think the real test is going to be what do you look like in pads and what do you look like when someone else is hitting you? Dulcich right now looked like he had burst, looks like he had speed, caught the ball well, caught the ball in stride, had a few good plays. Fantastic. The question is, can he stay healthy? And the answer so far has been no. And can he maintain a workload that will allow him to keep in football shape in the off season here leading up to the season? Or is he going to be, held back to try to keep him healthy? And a lot of times when players are in that situation, they often find themselves eventually getting hurt in the season anyway, because part of football is getting your body used to getting hit or worked hard and be able to sustain that level of play. So that's kind of Greg Dulcich. That's kind of one highlight that certainly came from today. The other thing that I thought was really interesting was who is being hyped up. And so, for example, Javonte Williams was being hyped up. And for those who watched the show last week and the week before, he is certainly on my, you're likely going to end up on the guillotine floor if you don't absolutely show out, this preseason for Javonte Williams.
Well, Rick, you need to get him to do like a slip and slide on AstroTurf. Get yourself built up, right?
Well, I'm not meaning that. The problem is that Javonte Williams' issue is his toughness. He's the dude that started running.
Oh no, build the body up, like you said. You do your knees on a AstroTurf to.
I did that. I did that because when I played 15s in rugby, you were ejected from the game if you had an open wound, and so in football it's a little bit different. But in rugby, they were very that was don't collect, go, get the hell off. We don't want to see you again. And so it was very commonplace in rugby, especially at a competitive level, where you would be able to look at dudes. And you can even see Zemet, I think, when I saw him in one of his pressers where he kind of lifted his arm like this, he is scarred from here to here.
Yeah.
I can assure you that is not a mistake. That was on purpose. He did that to himself on purpose.
I'm looking forward to see what that guy does.
Yes, I am too.
You and me both.
Yeah.
You and me both, man.
But with Javonte Williams, there's a huge hype train around him today, and the team highlights and that sort of thing. Part of me wonders if that's their attempt to kind of get him hyped out in the media and hopefully get a trade kind of for him, come cut time and whatnot. The other rumor is that it's between him and P. Ryan in terms of a roster spot. So it's, Simanje, hey, you versus Javonte, which one of you is going to, show up for us and be the guy. And I think that's a fair assessment because you're
Richie, don't the Broncos have a pretty good running back stable right now?
Barton was just put on IR, which, now's the time to get a dude on IR if he has a hangnail. Because that gives you the opportunity to be able to choose between Simanje and Javonte and not have to include Barton into that mix as well. Right? You can kind of keep him on IR and say, oh, it's a shame that you had the stiff wind that blew you over and had you, get a cut on your wrist. We'll put you on IR for the year. And we'll see you in 2025, where we want you on the 53-man roster.
I asked that about the Bronco running backs because I have a feeling that when cuts come, the Chargers will be grabbing people that they presume to be Greg Roman, Harbaugh types. So, if something doesn't work out with JK or Spiller or Vidal, they're going to be scouring to. And I last I checked, I looked at the Broncos. I'm like, man, they got a pretty good running back group over there.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
we do. We do. And we also have another guy that actually would probably be a good fit for them to, what's his name? It's just escaping me right now. If you give me 2 seconds here. Tyler Batty.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Mizzou guy. Yep.
Yeah, that dude has looked pretty good when he has been healthy. He, too, has had a couple kind of quirky things occur. But by and large, I could see him being, when he's behind and maybe as a guy that comes in as like a number 2 or number 3, I could see a guy like him getting poached by, a Harbaugh or I could even, to be quite honest, I could even see him getting poached by the Raiders or the Chiefs, if I'm going to be perfectly honest, because they would have seen him throughout multiple preseasons because they're going to be scouting the Broncos. They're going to have a lot more tape on some of those guys. And he's a guy that, he just fits the mold of our division, right? He's just, I think he's a guy that I think could kind of fit in terms of what we're looking for from our division. And
definitely seems like, KC, they might be throwing a lot more this year, but definitely seems like our division is kind of going back to that 12 personnel run mentality. And everybody's case is slightly different on why they're doing it. AP wants to run the damn ball. Harbaugh, Greg Roman want to run the ball. And I believe that's what they were doing in Denver with Peyton, but I believe they're going to also do that to help out their QB situation as well.
Well, one of the challenges that Peyton likes to do is he likes to run the ball and run it with power. And he wants to do that. And then he likes to then mix in what he calls just an offensive weapon. So he likes to use guys like what you saw with Kamara, for example. He likes to use running backs that can kind of do that sort of stuff as a guy to just kind of like throw into the mix. Just to really, really right. And so I think he could kind of do something like that where he's going to try to use I see Estime kind of being a guy that's going to be used in that kind of a way. I think you're going to see Jaleel McLaughlin being used a lot more in that type of mold and frame as well, where they're going to kind of throw him kind of just in behind, kind of between the linebackers and the D line to kind of use as like a quick slant and stuff like that. I could see a lot of those things happening with Peyton. Also because he doesn't have a quarterback that's going to hold onto the ball for like 11 seconds and
dance around
try to show up a sign to say bye Unlimited and that kind of stuff, right? So
I'm going to be so Unlimited pissed if Easton Stick continues to be the backup. That kid has no pocket awareness. I just watching him last year for the 4 games Herbert was out. I was just like, it was like watching.
He was the QB in the games. That's all you need to know.
It was like watching a car wreck. I'm like, oh my God, get rid of the ball. And he would hang on to the ball with his right hand and he would have the ball down by his hip. I'm like, what are you doing, man? Like, Max Crosby's coming in with his condor wings.
Yeah.
Please.
There was also a very interesting comment while we're on talking about just Greg Dulcich in the tight end position. There is some very interesting comments, to say the least, that were made by Sean Payton in the presser today with regards to the tight end position, which certainly makes you think that whether it was in the draft, free agency, or something else, that he is not happy with the current tight end group that he has on the roster. And
can you run us through those players real quick?
Yeah, so just to kind of give you an idea of the tight ends on the Denver Broncos, a couple of them I really like, but that doesn't mean that they're going to fit what Sean Payton is actually wanting to do. So Adam Troutman is kind of the all-around kind of Swiss Army knife. He's a great tight end for Sean Payton's system.
Came from the Saints,
and he was actually brought in as part of the draft process as a trade from the Saints, I think, to kind of showcase kind of what Payton is looking for from a tight end. We have Lucas Krull, who I think is kind of a lock to make our 53-man roster. And then where it gets really interesting after that is Greg Dulcich, who is kind of like the Jimmy Graham who can't block his way out of a wet paper bag. which is kind of where I would kind of put Dulcich there. And he's also always hurt. So I could totally see Dulcich being kind of on the wrong side of the 53 if he doesn't do what he needs to do.
As someone who invested in Dulcich in both dynasty leagues, I need him to pan out.
So maybe you don't want to pay attention to Alex's Lightning Fast Fantasy podcast advice.
No.
Shameless plug.
Hey, hope it pans out against your Chiefs.
Yeah.
And then there's two other tight ends. One of them I'm actually really interested in seeing in preseason, and I'll let you know who that is. That's Thomas Yasmin, who I think has. Yeah, I actually think he has some.
He's a yes man.
Yeah, he's taller, a good mix of size and speed, catches the ball well, but does have some blocking ability. And I think he's a dude that I would really look out for in preseason. I think he has the ability to kind of start to match what we see with Krull. But
he an undrafted guy, Richie?
Yeah, he is. He is. And I actually think that he pushes out Adkins, who I really liked last year and predicted made the 53, and he did. But I think he's going to push out Atkins because Peyton wants the dual threat. One of my favorite tight ends for the Broncos in recent years was Joel Dreesen when he was playing with Peyton Manning. Dreesen was almost always used with the Texans as a blocking tight end and very rarely caught the ball. But whenever he was thrown the ball, always seemed to catch it and always seemed to get good yards, but just was never used properly. Peyton, to me, is that kind of coach. He's the dude that says, I want you to be the well-rounded guy. I want you to be like a Trotman. You may not be the fastest, but you're smart. You may not be the guy that everyone thinks is flashy, but you always get the job done, and you always show up, and you're always in the right spot if we need you to make a play. And I think that that's exactly the type of player that Sean Payton's looking for from that tight end position, especially because he loves running those 12 personnel sets. And for the record as well, Peyton is also a big fan and proponent of 13 personnel sets, which is why the Broncos, in my opinion, are inevitably going to need to carry 4 tight ends on the roster this year if we're going to be successful.
So what you're saying is the AFC West is going to pretty much have the most snaps at 12 personnel in the league.
Probably,
minus the Chiefs, probably.
Yes.
I mean, come on, look at the Raiders. Look who they got. You know, nobody talks about the other guy they picked up.
Michael Mayer?
Bowers.
No,
the vet.
Forsythe? The Cole, was it Kement?
No, that's a Bear. He's a Bear.
They got a guy from Bear.
Another guy who came from another team.
Let's look.
Oh, is it Barnes?
No.
I could tell you.
Does it start with an H?
Harrison Bryant.
Oh, Harrison Bryant. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And even their fourth tight end is like 6'8".
I mean, we're dealing with new tight ends also. I feel like if you can't block, you're not making the team. So, and I know
in the AFC West, you're correct. I actually think that that's where the division has changed a lot more now. Is that the DCs and head coaches like the Paytons and the Harbaughs, and obviously Pierce is, with his football background, is going to be kind of right in that mental mindset of grit, toughness, etc. Is one of the reasons why Kelsey has done so well. One of the reasons why Rob Gronkowski did so well when he was the force in the league when he was playing is because they can block, and they can block well. Not just like, hey, they're okay. It's like, no. When they're on the field, they will literally do either block or catch, and they do both well. Not just well.
And when you're good at blocking, it opens the door to disguising routes, routes and what you're doing on a play easier. I mean, if you got a guy that's just strictly a receiver, if he's out there like, okay, he's not staying in here.
Okay, exactly what you just said. For the last 3 years, all our tight ends were strictly receivers. They were horrible at blocking. And so now, and then this year, our whole tight end group are pretty much, well, I don't know, because I was going to say, but Hurst, he's not a good blocker. He had a really bad year last year. But we grabbed Will Dissly, who is supposedly one of the best tight end blocking tight ends in the league.
Yeah, he just is only good for like 4 games.
Yeah. Story of our life.
But I mean, I think there's probably a
Charger
pretty
curse.
good correlation, though. If you like, obviously, once Gronk, Kelsey, Jimmy Graham, like all these guys came on and started putting up stats, you saw teams just looking for who can I take as a tight end that has all those traits, without factoring in that like those guys also blocked. And like
Yes.
you see so many highlight plays of them like staying in the block and leak out last second. And it's essentially like a tight end screen, goes for 30 yards. Well, it's like, if you have a guy that is only a receiving type player that's just in a bigger frame, you're not going to, commit to a run because he's engaging with you or something, things like that, I think take away possibilities, and opportunities to make big plays for these guys. So
I think our last true dual threat tight end was Hunter Henry.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was gonna say. He was probably the last all-around tight end you guys had, and look what he did.
We had,
and then
Everett,
after that, you went Everett, like all these guys that
Jared
were just
Cook, and then Everett,
receivers.
Yeah. We have Donald Parham and Stone
He was the average blocker.
We have Donald Parham, who was like a
US.
I forgot he came from that defunct league, and then we have Stone Smart, who's converted QB, and I'm like, I don't see any way these guys make the team. I do see our players getting poached by Jack's team, like guys, Telesco guys that don't make the 53. I think they will get poached. Yeah, and I don't know who it is, but I mean, I have a good idea of some of the guys, but yeah.
Well, I think Telesco's going to pound the table for some of them. The question's going to be where the
does AP want them?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like it's the balance of power on the roster and on the team. So if Telesco says, "Hey, I want these guys in," to what degree does AP now? Obviously, last year he kind of just like was filling in the role, but now as being the head coach for the team, where does his veto power step in when it comes to players being brought in?
If I was for example, AP, I would not.
It's limited.
You see what they did last year? I don't need him.
Well, AP walked out of the draft this year, so his power is going to be limited because that's the whole thing. The Raiders have been joint GM head coach, and that hasn't worked out. So Mark went with the division this year, and I'm watching the draft, and on Raider channels, and AP walks out of the draft on one of the picks. So it's like when they drafted Glaze. He just got up and left the draft room. So
I think everybody was like,
I think you guys felt that one with him.
Like every fan base was like, "What? That's Chargers were like, that's a Tom pick, man. That's a damn Tom pick, 100%." But
Yeah. So another thing that happened with the Broncos was we had a couple of our wide receivers, which I actually think they're starting to fit what Sean Payton's wanting to do a little bit better with the guys that we're getting in. We're bringing in guys that are more effort, more willing to block on run plays and another style. Basically, Alex, to your point, if you have a wide receiver that's only willing to run fast and go down and get routes, they're of less use to you as a team.
You only need one of those.
Yeah. Like you need one guy like that, and then the rest need to kind of be multi-purpose, right? And so the kicker here is I think what Sean Payton has done is he's looking and he's started to build out a pretty good stable of wide receivers that are not household names, but fit exactly what he's looking to do on the offensive side of the ball, given the fact that his playbook is going to be more flexible now. See, what the problem is that if you don't have a quarterback that can read the field and the defense, they're not going to be able to throw the ball in stride to guys as they're running crossers or any of the routes for that matter, because they're going to want to wait to see the guy open, which is what Russell Wilson's MO is, and say, "Oh, now I can throw." Well, yeah, that's like 13 seconds later after the play has already happened, and now you have a Max Crosby in your head who's going to like literally take your head off just for fun, and rightfully so.
Who's the receiver you guys drafted this year?
Franklin.
So you guys, Franklin, Mims.
No, but we drafted Nix, and Franklin was Nix's go-to guy. And so that's a clear pairing between those two. But So
and
we got Mims,
basically like Cortland Sutton. So
yeah,
And Patrick too is still there, right?
well, Tim Patrick's there. Obviously, my Tim Patrick jersey's on right now because he's far and away my favorite Bronco, probably
He's
currently right now.
extremely talented. It's just been unfortunate for him. The guy's
1
a
year.
stud.
1 year he had a bad year, and it's just kind of people have forgotten what he looked like, right? But I think he's a guy that'll surprise a lot of people again because they've forgotten, I think, a little bit of what he was able to do for us. And he was a much, much better blocker than Cortland Sutton. Like he was more akin to a tight end blocking.
That's probably how he got onto the field.
Yeah,
was
yeah,
through blocking, and then that opened. I mean, because he wasn't drafted, right?
Yeah. He was at the Jags, right? Originally, I think, if I'm not mistaken, as a late round. I think it was a really late round pick or an undrafted guy. I can't remember which. It was one or the other.
Well, he's got to prove himself too. Like, being a number 3 wide receiver to now being a number 2, potentially what you do with Sutton could be the number 1. So there's always a big difference when you start moving up the ranks and you get more attention, more double teams.
Yeah, he was undrafted.
Yeah. So you also have Marvin Mims, who is looking sharper and he's very good. And again, I brought him up last show. Jalen Virgil, another massive play or two that was logged today at camp. He's another guy that I am quite certain, based on the reading between the lines that happened last year, that was starting to really show out. And I think Peyton had made a couple comments about him in some of his earlier pressers. Got hurt in like an absolute fluke at camp, and I'm quite certain that he was a guy that Peyton had big plans for, because he's basically got blazing. He's as fast or faster than Mims, and like 6'2". And so that's an interesting combination of not the tallest guy, but not the shortest guy, but certainly has the speed to pair with height, which is a bit of a rarity, because a lot of the times when you're super quick, you're normally short or shorter, whereas he's kind of got an interesting mix between the two. And so I actually think that this year's wide receiver group, even though they're not getting the credit, and you look at the national media and all the rankings and all that kind of stuff, I think that despite that, I think the Denver Broncos wide receivers are trending in the right direction, because we've started to see the old picks that were around when John Elway was the GM and we had no idea who we were on offense. I think some of the new guys we're bringing in are a much better mold for the style of team and style of play we want to run. And that's a good thing. Nothing but a good thing. And I also think that there's been a recognition within the coaching staff that we need a bit of a reset at the running back position as well, to get ourselves back to a more healthy state. Stop gaps won't work for the long term. So I think you're going to see some changeover in that spot and that position group as well. My biggest concern still remains, and this should come as a surprise to no one who's a fan of the show, is I am petrified of what our offensive line is going to look like this year. I mean, Quinn Minor's excluded because he deserved the contract he got. He rose himself up to that level, and he deserved the contract that he received. He really, really just killed it last year.
He's a stud, man.
Yeah, I mean, good for him, right? But like
everyone else,
offensive center, huh? Powers didn't look great. I mean, he had some plays that he was good, and other plays you're like, dude, you're trash. Garrett Bowles, if they ever start calling holding penalties, is going to be back to being one of the most penalized players in the league. Yeah. Basically, he's the Sauce Gardner of the offensive line, in my opinion. And then same thing with Sauce Gardner. If he actually starts getting calls against him, like, the dude's going to be on the bench. And then I have additional concerns and continued concerns with the right tackle in McGlinchey. Now, I will also
Notre Dame guys.
I will also agree that by throwing the ball faster, in rhythm and in stride, with a playbook that better suits the quarterbacks, and you don't have a dude that needs phone books to see over the offensive line, I think that helps. Right? I do. I really do think that helps. But The question is how much? And you're not going to hear me, sugarcoating my Denver Broncos. I'm certainly not going to be coming on here saying that
you keep it pretty real with your Broncos. Almost slightly pessimistic, but it's like real. You're not glazing them up.
Yeah.
Well, you can only go low, and that means you can only go higher from that point.
Yeah. So
can't go any lower than the lowest, right?
Yeah, well, those same experts, Mile High Salute, said that Russell Wilson had a fantastic season, and then those same experts that came out on the national media and said that he had a fantastic season, they did a complete 180 after he was cut and said, well, he had problems, right? So I'm just going to skip the crap that goes in between A versus B and just kind of go right to the heart of the issue, so I don't have to backtrack and look like an idiot.
I'm convinced. I'm convinced sports media is the same thing as like our current media. Like I'm convinced it's the same thing. It's like they've got their guys, they've got their teams, they've got their coaches. They're gonna prop up who they want, so we'll never really know.
Well, sports media, a lot of it ends up on the East Coast and they don't know what the hell they're talking about.
So Jack, I'm a West Coast kid that lives on the East Coast, and I grew up the whole time going East Coast bias, which there is, especially around New York teams. But for the most part, I think it's a coping mechanism for West Coasters. And I've been out here for a little over a decade, and I've heard it. And believe me, when I grew up, especially in baseball, I was like, this is East Coast bullshit, right? Like, but NFL Network is now, they're out in the West Coast. They're in LA. Like, they've been out. I don't know how long they've been out there. Seems like for a while. Their new facility near SoFi Stadium. Now, so I think it's not 100% East Coast biased.
No, I'm not going to say it's 100% BS or 0%.
Used to be, I believe.
It falls in between, but when you read some of the articles and you're like, you're talking about players and you're not even talking about anyone that's behind that player or like what's going on or something that's old and outdated. It's like, okay, I heard this like a week ago.
Yeah, I have problems with certain writers.
Something else.
I have problems with certain writers that write like specifically for Charger stuff, and I'm like, it's always doom and gloom, right? Which very much so has been that case, especially last season. But and then there's some fanalists who coined that term. Somebody on this show. There you go, right there, Richie. Some fanalists, on these big networks, like they have their bias, like especially the Chiefs knob gobbler Nick Wright. Jeez Louises.
He gets
the
a little
stuff that comes out of his mouth, man.
With this stuff, yeah.
I'm like, this guy has a job though, so whatever. As long as the Chiefs are doing good, the guy's gonna be employed because they're gonna love what he says.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good call. GA. I like that.
East Coast ignorance. Could be a little better, I guess.
I don't know. Well, it's a completely different mindset, East Coast and West Coast. I mean, like I said, I'm a West Coast kid. I've been out on the East Coast. It's so different because everything here is so, I don't want to say congested, but it's so close to each other. When I grew up in San Diego, like the nearest team was 2 hours up north when there was a team in LA, and then the next team was San Francisco or the Cardinals, right? That's a huge distance. Up here, I've got the Commanders and Ravens right next to each other, but it seems like everybody here is like a Eagles fan, a Cowboys fan. It is intense.
A melting pot.
It's so intense out here with their sports, but could be ignorance. I mean, definitely. I can buy that.
Well, when you look at the map of where the largest cities are there in the U.S., a good percentage of them, I'm not saying all, but a good percentage of them track right along that East Coast kind of corridor there, which
definitely
makes
fun
sense
for hockey season.
Yeah.
Hockey season's a blast on the East Coast. The West Coast, it's like, I know the Vegas and the Kings, right, and the Ducks. It's
Tunes,
BS. It's
dark.
such bullshit compared to the East Coast. East Coast hockey, how close the fans can be. They get on trains, they drive. It's an experience. That's for sure.
Yeah, the closest thing to football that I have where I am here would be when the Leafs make the playoffs.
The Leafs make the.
Yeah, it happens from time to time.
Yeah.
I'm north of the border, so that's the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's the biggest city here in Canada. I'm about 2.5 hours north of it or so, give or take, depending on where you go in the city. When the Leafs start getting into playoff mode, you start seeing kind of what I started seeing when I was in Denver around a football game on any given Sunday. And that's the closest thing that I've seen here to what you would see for, just the feverish kind of fandom and stuff like that, where you see the stuff. But in Canada, you don't have that kind of atmosphere really for any sports team at all. And hockey is the closest thing that we have here to what you guys would have for football.
No, yeah, hockey is definitely. There's something else though. Somebody was on Pat McAfee today, and they talked about college football. They said the atmosphere in college football resembles what Europeans for their soccer clubs, like that fan base and how rabid it is. And they're saying, like, they say NFL can't even touch that, which I'm sure to some extent there are some pretty crazy fan bases in the NFL, but it was a good, like, I was like, I've seen that because I've gone to some games like Maryland versus Clemson and stuff, and I've seen those tailgates and how the singing and all that stuff that goes along with it, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's a good experience. You know what I mean?
Not yet.
In
poor islands.
In Canada, in the French side here at least, hockey has an H, but you actually don't pronounce the H when you say the word, just because they're French, and well, they're French.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hockey.
Okay.
Yeah. So it really is quite funny. But everything else in the Broncos was kind of as you'd expect. And I only think the only relevant piece here that I'll kind of share with the group here before we move on to the Raiders and the Chiefs is the quarterback competition. So there is obviously,
here we go.
There's obviously some supposed kind of, well, of course this is going to happen. But as it turns out, and this seems universal from everyone that has reported or has been to the facility today. The order was Stidham, Nix, Wilson. Although I keep on questioning if that's just a bias that we're seeing from the kind of media members that are there, which is they're trying to pump up the new draft pick and they're overlooking things that they wouldn't normally overlook if it was, Carson Wentz, who's like a vested veteran that's been in the league forever now at this point, or anyone else like Jacoby Brissett or someone else, like pick a guy that's been in the league for a while now. Are you going to give Nix and them the same leash or rope? Probably not. You're going to give the rookie a lot more rope and kind of overlook certain things that you see and say, oh, he did great. It's like, no, he did great relative to the fact that he's a rookie. Did he actually do great? Yes or no? I am happy to be proven wrong, but if I had to generally gauge things and guess, my guess is going to be that you're going to have Nix. Hopefully he's going to sit for this year, the majority of this year. And then the bigger question is Stidham going to stay ahead in that QB race, or is Wilson going to start leveling up because he does have, generally speaking, more arm talent. And once things start clicking, as long as the playbook fits his skill set, I could totally see Wilson kind of start to overtake that room and maybe even start the season for my Denver Broncos. But if it's not Wilson, I'd be shocked if Stidham is not the starter at that point then.
That's so, you and the Raiders have like the coachers have like a little dilemma on their hands. It's like, who do they give first reps to? Because who do they focus the playbook on? Who do they give the ones the most work with, kind of thing. I think that's a little bit of a headache, but I'm sure they'll figure it out sooner or later.
Well, I mean, I think the Broncos are in a slightly different position than the Raiders, if I'm going to be honest. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. I'm just saying I think it's a little bit more linear with the Broncos. They drafted Nix high up in the draft, and there is only one path forward for Denver, which is at some point he is your starter. Okay. There is no question. The thing with the Raiders is AOC 12. While he looked good last year, and I think with a playbook that's geared towards him will likely look even better this year, he was not drafted really high in the draft. He also wasn't drafted by this current coaching regime that's there either. And so the coaching staff currently, the regime, etc., has an out. They literally have the door, 3/4 of the way open to kind of kick AOC 12 out if he does not show up and kind of blow the doors off this season. So I just say that the Broncos, I think, are in a different position because, like it or not, next year, Nix is going to start for the Broncos. Come hell or high water, that's just kind of going to be what's probably going to happen. Whereas I think the Raiders are they're in a more forgiving and more flexible position given who their coaching staff is now and when and where their current quarterback that is believed to start was drafted.
I mean, technically, they could run out both those guys.
Yep.
No, Richie, I'm going to disagree with that. I think instead of the door 3/4 shut, I think it's 3/4 open. You got a quarterback that was the 8th quarterback on Purdue. He worked his way up, became a starter. Raiders traded up in the 4th round to get him. You're going through a coaching change with.
Wait, what round?
Your 4th round.
Okay.
4th round. So, and then it comes up, you got a coaching change, and then your offensive coordinator was your quarterback coach. And, you come in and you're the 3rd guy coming out of that room. Now you're the starter. Under AP. He was the 2nd best rookie quarterback. Not saying there's a lot of quarterbacks that were starting last year, but there was a lot of quarterbacks hurt and other guys coming in. He was the 2nd best guy behind Stroud. And now you're going to get a full training camp under a new offensive coordinator, which is going to be it's not a McDaniels system, which McDaniels is run it my way, or you just don't change the play, don't change anything. It's my way or the highway type guy. So AP is leaving the doors open for him to become that starter. Now, it's his job to lose is, again, what AP said. So, if it will come down to training camp, and I think that's for pretty much any quarterback room that's completely, not 100% decided, like Kansas City or the Chargers. You're going to have that competition and you're going to have to play it out. But as of right now, it's AOC's job to lose.
Who's your
not
number
the
2?
Other way around.
Minshew.
Sorry. Yeah, Minshew's the backup.
No, I asked a question that I actually already knew the answer to, but my point is that I think your coach's comments mirror what my general comment was earlier, which is I think they like AOC 12. I do. I actually think the team really likes him and hopes that he continues to level up and ladder up and do well. But I also think they're being realistic, and you can see what they've done in terms of the offseason here, where they brought in what I can only describe as a well above average insurance policy.
Agreed.
Right? I think that's a fair statement to make. Look, I'm going to be super critical of my Denver Broncos because I can be and I will, but I'm also going to be real when it comes to the other teams. I have praised for many years now the Las Vegas Raiders and predicted in most of the games that we were going to lose to them, and I was correct, and the majority of my fan base told me I was an idiot. Well, I was right, and they were wrong. So I'm willing to be pretty balanced when it comes to these things. I also predicted that we were going to split with the Chiefs last year, and I was also correct with that. So again,
I'm just trying to think, how does AOC lose his starting job to Minshew?
It's got to go through training camp.
I don't think he does. I think it's like,
I think he starts off with it.
Week 2, he looks like hot garbage. Minshew time. I think that's probably what it is.
That's what I'm getting at too. Is I'm not going to say that this is before the season that he's going to lose the job. I think it's going to be more of a once the season starts and as they continue going. Let me put it to you this way. If the defense looks as good as I think they're going to look for the Raiders this year, and they start losing games because the offense is struggling to put points on the board, and they believe that the spark at the quarterback position will make the difference, especially if they have a defense that is looking good, I think that AP, he's already proven he's willing to make tough decisions and make them quickly. Because he's done things when he was in the coach's chair last year where he subbed guys out and swapped other guys in, and they immediately saw improvements. So he's shown he's willing to be that guy. More power to him, by the way. It takes a certain kind of leader to do that kind of thing. See, Jack, I'm balanced when I'm saying these things. So I think what you're going to probably see is AOC 12, like by week 3 or 4. That's when either the hook's going to be out in full extension and they're going to yank them up.
Who they got playing like the first 4 weeks? Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah, I think it could be a pretty short. I mean, even in the Chiefs game on Christmas when they won, that was because of the Raiders defense. AOC had like 60 passing yards. He didn't complete a ball in the second half. And I mean, I think week 1 or 2, if you see a game similar to that, because I mean, this Raiders defense is certainly capable of doing that. Every week of, shutting down the offense, and he's throwing, he's 4 for 4 completions and, and not moving the ball. I think it's going to be a pretty short leash, because why would you waste your defense? Why would you go 4, 5, 6 weeks into the season of your defense playing good and the offense not helping them? That's only going to create more issue than not. And Minshew, I don't think has ever started a season week 1 being the starter, and he's shown that he's capable of basically coming in off the bench and performing. So he's done well. He's not the type of QB to like necessarily win you a game, but he's not going to lose you a game. He's going to manage the offense the way it's designed. And I
disagree with that. When he was with the Jags, he won them 2 or 3 games, and he was there with his legs alone, like for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, looking at what he did last year, I would say, he was more of just like a game manager, which I mean, that's not a knock. Like that's what you want to some degree. So yeah, I think because I think it's hard to lose your starting job especially in the NFL in training camp. Cause I mean, the ones barely play any preseason games, if at all. And, I think it's more of like a passage of, okay, we're starting the season with you. We're hoping there's some quick and, visible improvement, or we brought Minshew in for a reason and we're going to go that route.
Yeah. And that's what I thought we were talking about was like training camp, not the regular season. And I do believe, the best guy is going to win. And right now I just see, because Richie said, hey, the door was 3/4 shut. And I was saying, no, it's 3/4 open. It's his job to lose during training camp. Then I misheard you, bro.
Yeah, it's 3/4 open. But my point was it's 3/4 open because AP's foot is also half cocked, ready to kick him out the door. Right. Like that's my point. Right.
If you don't do the job, he'll boot you.
I'm still
my point,
in belief
right?
that Dak Prescott is the Raiders QB next year.
Yeah, we'll see.
Not going to happen.
I'm not going to say never.
We're pinning this. If that happens,
I've been saying this for weeks.
DZ the prophet.
It just makes a lot of sense, man. And I like Dak, and I think he needs a change of scenery. And getting away from Jerry World would probably do him wonders.
Yeah,
and going to
Vegas,
there's certainly
a contract situation going on.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I hear about it every freaking morning. So
every day it's a Dak, CD, their linebacker, Parsons. Yeah, like who are they going to keep right now? I mean, honestly, the Cowboys are stupid because it's been set. It was set a week ago. From the what's his name, the wide receiver from Minnesota, he got his money.
Jefferson,
yeah, Jefferson. So right now the market is set. it's been a week and they've done nothing. So shame on the Cowboys. They did it last year or a couple years ago with Dak, and they're dragging their feet again. And you keep having to pay more and more money for these players because you're not being proactive, you're being reactive.
I don't know. They just got Wilson and
I mean, I think this
both on 1-year deals.
Big picture for the Raiders, I think this year is going to be the sign of, like you were kind of saying, I think as we got into the draft, are they a quarterback away or not? And I think this next offseason is going to be when they make their move to get, their guy. Should it not be
team?
the Raiders?
Oh.
I'm saying, I think we definitely see them make a more splashier move
right now on paper, the Raiders are pretty good, man. Their secondary is very underrated. I was looking at them. I'm like, what are the question marks with the Raiders right now, position wise, top to bottom? And I guess you can go the lazy answer and say O-line, but maybe running back, because I'm not buying the Zamir White hype. They didn't want to use him when what's his name was around, and then all of a sudden he goes down and everybody's like, oh my God, Zamir White. But reality, really, he didn't do much. And now this offseason, we got a few pictures of his biceps and everybody's going crazy saying he's a beast.
Well, you didn't need to use him last year, DZ. It's like when you got Josh Jacobs, he's one of the best running backs in the league. Why would you even need to really use
Josh Jacobs last year was horrible.
Well, yeah, because you've got to look at like what we had at quarterback. When you can put 8 guys in the box because your quarterback can't throw more than 10, 15 yards down the field, I mean, you're going to stack that box. You don't have a shot.
I mean, we could go back and forth. There's reasons between AOC. I mean, Devontae Adams, Mayer, right? And then Jacoby Myers. Like, there could be there's a ton of reasons why things didn't work the way they did and why Zamir White. But I'm just saying this year, like I was actually complimenting the Raiders right now, Jack.
I think Zamir's got a good shot. I mean,
I'm like looking with the question marks. It's probably QB, which you just need
to biggest question on the team for sure.
Poor man's Purdy. Just deliver the ball to your playmakers. AP says he wants to run the ball. That's probably saying, that's how you let the defense kind of take over games. So, yeah, man. I mean,
well, actually, DZ, the other thing that I had mentioned on the show, and I mentioned about my Broncos too. So I'm if nothing, I'll be consistent when I make the comment. And I've said the same thing about your Chargers. I said that last week actually on the show about the Chargers as well, which is Denver Broncos have a pretty clear-cut general idea. The head coach knows what he wants to do, and it's a matter of purging the dead wood on the team that was left over from the former regime that has really hindered their ability to start to redevelop the team in Sean Payton's vision. And I think that's a fair comment to make. Now, you're in a similar position to where the Broncos were last season, where I think you're going to be in an interesting spot where Harbaugh could well come out the gate swinging and kill it, but there is a very real possibility, which cannot
it doesn't happen,
that you basically tank. Not saying it's on purpose, but don't do well because some of the holdovers from the former regime simply don't fit what Harbaugh wants to do when he feels limited and can't really get going what he wants to get going.
Right. And they were kind of handicapped from the start when the new staff came in because they had huge cap issues. And then those were relieved by the departure of Keenan, Mike, all those guys, right? So when they went out, they had to go bargain shopping, right? For these filler guys, right? These 1-year rentals, these kind of guys that need bounce back seasons. They're like, hey, come play with us. We'll have a good season. And then you could get paid somewhere else or here or whatnot. Yeah. So there isn't that many Harbaugh guys on this team. That's why I'm saying 25. I've been saying this too. Obviously, I've not been saying it to you guys, but I've been saying 25 season. That's their season. And it sucks because everybody's so excited for this season. And another reason that people are believing that they're going to do well, and this is all money talk, is that Mac pretty much said, like, I don't want to sign up again unless we're playing competitive ball. Now, a coach can be like, oh, of course we're going to play competitive ball late in the season. You know what I mean? But supposedly Bosa and Mac have this thing where they're like, we'll take these pay cuts if we're playing competitive ball late in the year. But, you'll tell them whatever you want them here, right? You'll say whatever you want, man. Sure, it will be. It's going to be great. It's going to be gravy.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I agree.
Like I said, I am not pessimistic and I'm not optimistic. I am like, all right, let's just see how this
Show it
goes,
to me.
man. Let's just see how this goes this year.
So Jack, on your team, I see you guys in a slightly more advanced position as the Chargers. As in, AP knows a lot more about the players on the team and how he believes they're going to fit. So I think you have a little bit more. There's just a little bit more that your coaching staff has because of AP and what he has. However, I still think that they're on the flip side of that same comment. I still think AP is going to be needing to answer some real questions because now that he has the ability with the new offensive coaching staff, play designs, etc., has his assessment and the team's assessment of those players on the roster, even though they've seen them for longer, do they truly fit with the vision of the team? Or are there some guys that they thought that were going to work that actually don't in terms of what they want to do and why they want to do it? Remember, everything is for a reason. Like there's a reason why Sean Payton wants his style of football because he has got a proven track record at this point of making quarterbacks that have even struggled at times look way better than they otherwise have stats-wise, and shown that he's able to take teams, even if they're hurt and injured, still look at least modestly competitive. So that's great. Harbaugh, when he went with the Niners, literally turned them around in one season, although in fairness, they actually had a pretty good team, and Harbaugh turned some guys into household names, which helped. Similarly now, when you look over at your Las Vegas Raiders, you have some absolute studs on your roster right now, including Max Crosby, which is a great spokesperson and kind of anchor to have in your defensive room. But the question is, how many other guys on your roster are truly going to fit in the vision for the future for the team? And how many of them are going to be good but not good enough?
That's going to be a really interesting question. So with AP on the defensive side, he knows these guys since he was a coach, as a linebackers coach last year. So he knows the defensive guys. It's going to be all about the offense, because he's not an offensive guy. He's bringing in Getsby. He's getting Marvin Lewis to help him, who's been a head coach. So I know he knows already. He doesn't know all the answers. So he's just trying to surround himself with, people that can, guide him to make those type of decisions. So everything's going to have to play out. And I think all the biggest question marks, which is kind of crazy, because the weapons on the Raiders side they're good. It's going to be that offensive line. It's going to be the scheme that they run. It's going to be some of those running backs, because that, as a whole, I think it is one of the weaker positions on the Raiders squad.
Who is it? Madison, White, and Laub or Lobby, whatever. Lobby.
But I think.
Well, I don't see. That's one of the guys I kind of see, fighting for a roster spot, because he's been the incumbent guy. He's been there for 9 years, and he has the same job as Lobby. So you got a younger version. Again, it's going to come down to really for third down blocking and who's going to get to play. If they're going to probably right now in the beginning, if they're going to throw the ball, it'll probably be Lobby. If they're going to run block right now, I'd say Abdullah. But I just don't see Abdullah. I think he's the fringe, probably maybe a roster cut. I just don't see him sticking around when you draft a kid like that. And by the way, so all the Raider fans out there, so the PUP list came out today, since today was, first day of camp. The biggest concern that I have right now is our starting left tackle, and Colton Miller. He's on the PUP list from the surgery from last year. So that's the one that worries me, because they're giving no information on him. So there is no timetable. So that would be my biggest concern. He had like a shoulder surgery.
Just stick Mayer out there. You'll be fine.
No. Right now, I think it would be Pete that they got from New Orleans. He's a 3-time. He's an older guy. He was a 3-time, Pro Bowler, but he was expendable, by the Saints. Saints are always in salary cap hell, and he's an older guy.
Policy.
He is. So
I
that's
did
my
want to
biggest
ask
one.
you, Jack. Did I see that Michael Gallup is retired?
Yeah, I was going to get to that too.
Okay.
He did. He did. He retired today, which I find is interesting. Which, I was excited when they picked him up. I was thinking, okay, yeah, he could
I
be
wanted him to be a Charger. Like, yeah.
I liked him. I don't know if I liked him more than I liked, Trey Tucker, our 3rd round pick last year that we got from, Darren Waller, because Tucker, he's just a really crafty, super fast, short guy, where Gallup is like, more polished, route running, so forth. But yeah, he's gone.
Because of his, did he have an injury last year?
Gallup?
I think he's been injured. I think he's kind of always getting hurt every year. Every year he's been poised to take, the next step, and then something happens.
I mean, he had some flashes where I was like, man, this guy's good. And then it just was like a couple weeks and then it would go away.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to ask you, Jack. I mean, I didn't know if there was some lingering like injury concern, or if you had seen anything as to the reasoning, or if he was just.
No, it sounds like he just decided to hang it up. Maybe he's not back. And it's kind of funny that you said that you wanted him too, and I'm like, that would fit the Charger mold right there, getting hurt. But yeah, it's like, there's really not a reasoning behind it. I read the articles today. Just sounds like he wanted to hang him up. Maybe he's not back.
Yeah.
But
if that injury stuff happens with us again, continues, then we're just plain on cursed. It's just a curse because they have a whole new staff again this year with one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in college football is now with us. So I'm like, if this continues to happen, there's a curse and somebody needs to sacrifice somebody's firstborn or something, man.
I don't know what we got to do to fix it, but we need to fix it.
And another thing that you said earlier, about Telesco bringing guys over, I think it was your wide receiver who's still hurt. Was it Tyler Guyton? Jalen Guyton? And I'm like, okay, they brought him over. He's hurt still.
Oh, shit. Well,
he's not on the pup list, but he's hurt.
Him and this guy, T. Billy, who Billy went, I think, to the Jags or something, but they were with Herbert, I believe, his rookie year. And that's when they were just letting Herbert just air it out. They're like, they'll be down there somewhere. And they both have speed. I think they're all, originally they were 4.3 guys, like low 4.4s. And Herbert was just chucking it to Jalen Guyton and T. Billy, Tyler Johnson, I believe that was there, something like that. So everybody had hopes for Guyton, and then last year I think he got injured, and then he came back, and there's this funny picture of him where looks like he's pregnant. Like the guy's belly, we're like, dude, what the hell is going on with this guy? He's on the sidelines, his shirt's up, and we're like, you're a receiver, man. You're not a low lineman. And he
came over to my house and drank beers with me.
You know what? He's like he had the whole Fu Manchu thing going too with his big belly, and I was just like, oh God, get him the hell out of here.
Yeah. So when you said about Tom T, bringing certain players over, I'm like, oh yeah, just don't bring the injury bug. And I saw that report, today, and I'm like, okay, great. And we got a couple more. We got a couple more guys on the pup list too. One I'm concerned with is, Jackson Power Johnson, our 2nd round pick.
He's on the pup.
He's on the pup.
He was hurt when he was drafted, though.
Oh, okay. I'm sure he'll be fine.
I'm hoping he's fine. And then the last one is Darian Butler, which I don't see Darian Butler making a team. I kind of liked him, when he first came out, but he never sees the field.
It sucks so much, Jack, that you have Jackson Powers Johnson and Bowers, who were 2 guys that Chargers fans got extremely invested in before the draft. They were like, man, these are going to be Chargers. They're going to be Chargers. And they go over to our rivals.
To Telesco.
Both of them go with Telesco. And I'm just like, oh, my God. You can't hate these guys yet, but it's just like.
I told
half full, though.
DZ, I get it. It's like
you guys know your old GM style. You know what I mean? If it was still Telesco, you knew your draft.
If you notice, a word I've been saying is paper, right? How many years have we said have the Chargers been crowned off season oh, they're going to look at them on paper? I think it's been the last 4 years, 5 years, maybe right when Rivers left. They're like, they're loaded. This team's loaded on paper. And every year they start getting nicked, going down 1, 2, 3, losing players. And the main struggle, and maybe Tom will learn his lesson, is he never knew how to fill those gaps. The depth, he never went out aggressively and got people to fill. Like when our receiving core went down, I think it was last year. I believe it was last year. People were like, and it was early. We're like, go trade for somebody, do it. I mean, he wouldn't do it. He would bring in some dude off the streets, and we're like, come on. So that's why I'm really happy that we got a Baltimore guy, and they're very aggressive in getting guys, trading for high end talent to make it work.
No, Baltimore is also known for intentionally targeting depth. So Baltimore, the Steelers, even the Browns now. I mean, I never thought
it's good for their division, obviously.
Yeah.
That's the team. The Browns. So you just said the Browns. NFL Network had their pup list come out. It's like a mile long. Anyways.
No, but the Browns have the Browns had typically not been very good because they've had poor depth and everything. But then these last 6-7 years, I mean, they're letting top offensive linemen go, and you swear that they're going to end up missing a beat, and then their offensive line the next year grades out higher because the guy they had behind him was even better than the dude they let go.
I picked them. I picked the Browns
crazy.
last year for that division, and that bit me. And I'm still flirting with picking them again in this year.
They are, yeah. So, Alex, let's close out the show with your Chiefs and some news from your camp, and then
TMZ Chiefs.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think probably the biggest news. Well, you know, they're in full swing of practice with everyone. I think they had their 4th open practice today. So they're in shells right now, but I have to go on full pads tomorrow. But you know, you're already in full preseason swing when you're seeing videos of Travis Kelce fighting with someone. So
Karlaftis.
Yeah.
I would pay money to watch that fight.
Yeah.
That happens every year, though. I think, you know, some guys, they kind of play with this kind of violent propensity or just, you know, violent undertone. And I mean, that just like I played with guys that would get in fights like every practice because that's just like they had to play pissed off. It was just like the perfect storm. I mean, it didn't last long. And like I said, I think it happens very early into the preseason, and it's always with Kelce. And you know, he was, to his credit, I think, standing up for, you know, a hit that was put on Tony. Probably telling Karlaftis like a little too early to be doing that. I'm sure he didn't use those words, but that's probably the reason. But I mean, otherwise, you know, liking what I see so far in camp and in the highlights. Yeah, Justin Watson did get hurt today too. Lower leg injury, but don't really know much.
All three of our days get better when we hear about something going wrong in Kansas City.
Yeah. And yeah, Worthy, I think this is his 3rd practice miss with strep throat. But before that, I mean, there was a lot of highlights of Worthy pretty much, you know, being as advertised and kind of fitting in pretty good, you know, into the Chiefs offense, and already, I think, meshing pretty well with Mahomes. So like I said, pretty exciting time to see the rookies kind of already being implemented early and often, you know, with the first team. So, you know, I would think Worthy be back probably pretty soon if it's truly strep throat. And excited to see, you know, how things progress as they get closer to in-game action and, you know, more full speed drills and things like that. But so far so good with him. And same with kind of why I mentioned the rookies, but same with Jared Wiley, who I know I've talked about before. It's the rookie tight end they took out of TCU, but he's been, I mean, he's really been coming on lately in 7-on-7 drills. And even today, I mean, he caught a pretty sick, you know, 40 plus yard, you know, route down the sideline on Tranquil, which, I mean, is not an unathletic linebacker. So
Drew was our
but he's meant more for the, you know, charging the quarterback than covering. I mean, we've all seen Tranquil.
Though. But yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is, you know, 4th round tight end to be getting, open and open enough for Mahomes to give him, targets in these drills on first team defense. I mean, that's a good sign to see, this early into the preseason. So yeah, I mean, everything, all the rookies seem to be getting involved often, and they're, making it a point, I think, to get all these guys involved. I think offensively, the biggest story to watch progress is the left tackle battle with Wanye Morris and Kingsley, whatever. Yeah, that guy from BYU, but they've been splitting, pretty equally, who's first team reps and or who's on second team, and from kind of the pressers with Nagy and Reed today, that seems to be sort of the ongoing theme going forward until someone, makes, I guess, the first move. So, aside from everywhere else on the offense, I think that's really the only, we're not sure who's the starter yet. But at the same time, I mean, it's not a bad thing when you got two young left tackles, both, fighting for a starting spot. So yeah, that'll be interesting to watch. And then same with Luis Zamit or Zamit, or however you say it. It like, I know we talked about him briefly earlier, but yeah, I mean, every practice, it seems that they're giving him more and more opportunities to find a way onto the field. I think yesterday, I don't think it was today, but they were having him practice, kickoff as the kicker. And, so it depends what Chiefs channel you go to. Some people are like, oh, he was just signed as publicity, or,
Well,
and
that's what I was thinking, but didn't they pay him pretty hefty?
yeah, they gave him, I think a
money.
multi-million-dollar, deal. And I'm of the position that they didn't just go sign him and give him money to not try to use them. And especially with how special teams is evolving, he's kind of, I think, the prototypical type player you want to be.
I think Andy is playing 3D chess right now with that guy, and then with Matt Ariza, who you guys also signed.
Yeah.
Like, your special teams is probably going to be unreal with Harrison Butker healthy.
Yeah. I mean, it's exciting to watch that. And I mean, at the same time, he's getting second team reps at running back. So, I'm really eager for the first preseason game and to see how he looks, in a organized outing, and, with someone that's not on the Chiefs defense going against him. But, yeah, I think it's really exciting to watch him progress. And then, and it's kind of similar, they're also giving Kadarius Toney running back reps, which I think is interesting, and kind of tells me that this coaching staff's not ready to give up on him yet. And I think they're also trying to find creative ways to get him the ball, and probably to boost his confidence a little bit. Because, after last season, I think a lot of his questions are talking about improving, from his drops from last year, and kind of being non-existent pretty much after week 1, when he, dropped the ball that led to 7 points and they lose by 1. But yeah, I mean, so it's just good to see camp in full swing. Good to see the rookies, getting implemented early, and I think exciting to see once we get to, like I said, actual preseason games, who kind of rises to the top in terms of, getting the meaningful reps, and I think ultimately progressing into, getting meaningful reps in week 1.
Do you think the Chiefs want to get back to that Tyreek era with Mahomes?
Yes, I think so, and I think the writing's kind of on the wall that that's what they want to do, because they obviously drafted Worthy, who, I mean, ran the fastest 40 ever, and also went and got Hollywood Brown, who I think probably ran a pretty fast 40 at the combine too. And
I mean, I would,
and that's something that the offense has missed. I mean, they got Valdez-Scantling when they got rid of Tyreek, and all the advertising on him was, well, he runs just as fast as Tyreek, and it should be just as good of a deep threat option. But then you found out, well,
I mean, Tyreek was special with his start and stop and acceleration was unworldly. Nobody else, I think, can do that. Maybe Tank Dell, but maybe not.
Maybe.
Even him.
I don't know. It's pretty
Maybe.
unmatched athleticism. I mean, it's one thing to run 23 miles an hour in a straight line. It's another thing to do it when you start and stop and make guys miss and get back to that. And, I think Tyreek is really the only one that can do that.
I've heard some people
Tyreek reminds me of Cliff Branch, who's got a gold jacket. I mean, that
yeah.
I mean, he's got to be the fastest guy in the NFL.
He's averaging a kid per 100 receiving yards too. So,
yeah, all it takes is one play to get that.
Yeah.
Do you think that Rashee Rice gets suspended next season?
I'm glad you asked about it. I meant to talk about that. In Reed's press conference, he was asked about communications they've had with the league, and it's kind of take it at face value right now because it's could just be coach talk or just kind of trying to keep things quiet. But he pretty much indicated they haven't had any conversations about any sort of suspension.
Usually means that the punishment doesn't happen till way later
next year. Yeah, so it's either,
which is wild.
And I think too, part of it's probably. I haven't really been trying to keep up with it, but I also haven't seen any news of any sort of resolution with the criminal, proceedings. So part of it could be the NFL is taking the position of, well, we'll let the criminal matter play itself out and then do, our administrative things.
Right, but that is a departure from what they have done. And so my issue with that.
Well, I think we all have issues. But go ahead.
Well, my biggest issue with that is they have not done that or given other players the same benefit of the doubt when it comes to those sorts of things. We have seen the league take action on other players that have been.
I can name 2 other players on the Chiefs that got suspensions, and they were after their criminal things were done.
Well, so I'm like, this is another person is Jordan Addison.
That's what I'm saying. I have no idea, but I'm thinking that could be part of it. Is technically you're innocent till proven guilty, and if he has not had any sort of conviction in anything, then what is he guilty of?
Right.
And so I think you get into a legality issue if you start laying the hammer down and saying you're suspended for 6 weeks, no pay because of the speeding thing while it's still ongoing. And then it gets dismissed and he's like, what speeding thing? You know what I mean? So not to say that's going to happen. The situation's certainly not going to end up in just an outright dismissal, but it's a slippery slope if you start doing that. And I don't know if that is truly different, but I know with like Willie Gay and Frank Clark, both of those guys didn't get any sort of suspension until Frank Clark's gun issues were resolved in the courts, and same with Willie Gay's domestic violence situation. Like they let those play out from a legal sense before they got any suspension. Like Willie Gay got one in the middle of the year, and I think Frank Clark did too. So, I would prefer they do it early if that were the case, because I would hate for the things to get going and then, you're week 10 and it's like Rashee Rice, that's done, 6-game suspension. And then you're looking at, the end of the year.
Have they done that ever though, other than
I don't know.
Like I've never.
I guess they did with Ray Rice. I'm thinking Ray Rice was suspended pretty quickly.
No, he wasn't. So Ray Rice was, so the league used to do it the way that they're doing it now, which I think the way that the league is doing it now is the correct way. Is you're innocent until proven guilty. Like what exactly did you do? And then the suspension comes down like a hammer. Cool. Great. However, after Ray Rice, the league overcorrected and then started suspending guys almost as soon as the thing took place, because there was all like the pounding on the table to say, well, one way or another, there is one of 2 different league policies that you violated. One is
overarching one.
Like there's the overarching one, which is conduct detrimental to the league, which basically is a complete broad brushstroke of like, you have disrespected the shield, which is like, okay, cool. And of course, the sad part about that is that charge is super subjective, right? Like super duper subjective, right? It's like, okay, what's conduct detrimental to the shield? Like, is that based off of one person's opinion or multiple people's opinion? Is it just based on whatever Goodell thinks at the time? Or is it based on like some kind of like random democratic process.
Heaven forbid you play some
Yes.
bets.
It could be random. It could be just if you're playing for a team that's like in contention versus a team that's not in contention.
Right.
Or if like, the Raiders versus the NFL. Hey, if it was a Raider player, I'm sure it would have been, done a lot quicker.
Right. And so they overcorrected with Ray Rice, and then what they ended
That's
up
in your
doing
DNA, isn't it, Jack?
Yeah.
It is in the DNA.
The Raider
It's like,
fan base, it's in their DNA.
hey, growing up from the 70s and watching Al Davis and all his court battles and everything else. And yeah.
Rest in peace, Al Davis.
Well, and that's what I was getting at. You just don't want to open yourself, and I'm sure the league doesn't want to open itself up to, court battles and additional liability for, like I said, even if they went to like, hey, Rashee Rice, you're still going on with this ticket thing, but you obviously acted in a way that's detrimental to the league, so we're going to suspend you 6 games due to that. Well, then he could turn around and, file a stay or sue him for lost wages or whatever to say like, well, yeah, this is what they suspended me for, but every other person's only been given 2 games for that clause where they gave me 6. And that's why, I think that they probably won't do anything until legally it's played out, because they don't want to open the door.
This isn't towards Rice because, I'm sure let stuff happen, but the NFL has become such a business that I feel like they don't even care about role models anymore. Like, I don't understand why we let this fly in such a public, a league. Like, I don't know. To me personally, it's like you mess up, like it's like a privilege to play in the NFL.
Yeah,
I feel you make ungodly amount of money while you do have the time in there, right? Like, I feel bad for some of the other guys, but it's like you mess up like this, like DUIs and domestic abuse and things like that. I mean, immediately should be like, boom, we don't tolerate it. But I get where you have the legal process has to come through because you're innocent until proven guilty. I get that. I mean,
yeah, and I mean, I don't know. That's just me talking as an attorney. That's just, I'm not gonna act like I have any clue as to how the league, analyzes these things, because I'm pretty sure, like with the Ruggs situation, I'm pretty sure he was suspended like that day. I mean, but I don't know. I mean, I can't remember.
That's a good question. It didn't take long, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I mean,
Ruggs was arrested, right? Like right.
Yeah, he was arrested. Well,
he
killed somebody.
I mean,
was she ever
different
put
situation
in cuffs that day?
No,
he was charged. He was charged that night.
Okay.
He fled the scene and then turned himself in through an attorney.
I just think that the NFL needs to do a better job. And it's not.
Oh, I agree.
It's look, Jordan Addison. This is his second thing. He's a kid, right? Yeah, I believe something happened last year too.
Last year, but he was allegedly rushing his dog to the vet or something. But
that's a good excuse because I have dogs.
Well, picture the NFL its own court system. I mean, look at a great example. Look at John Gruden. 800,000 emails leaked, or 800,000 emails, but only his were leaked.
That was a hit job. That was such a hit. It was like,
that was a hit job by far. It's like, forcing Mark to fire him.
Oh my God.
So I mean, it's all about the dictatorship of Goodell.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, who knows? They could be like, okay, you guys are our most, marketable, profitable team right now. Like, we'll work with you on this Rice situation, but
no, and that you just said it.
I mean, it could be like that too. I have no idea.
The Chiefs are like the face of football right now. They're one, if not the team, especially throw in the Swift thing from last year. Mahomes, right? Best QB since probably ever, right? Behind, Brady and him, you can debate, but they're like, dude, do we really want this negativity on our cash cow, the Kansas City Chiefs? Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, it's a plethora of ways for how it could be going, but I think the bigger thing is, obviously Reed has said, they haven't had any communications yet about what's going to happen with Rice. So, I think for me as a Chiefs fan, that kind of tells me, well, he's going to be he's going to be playing, at the start of the season, whether he plays his full season and then gets a suspension next year or gets one later in the year after he gets his, court thing resolved. And that remains to be seen. Because I also think it's interesting that he hasn't resolved, the criminal stuff. in any fashion yet. And that's either a strategic thing to avoid the suspension now, or it's the defense attorney couldn't get something worked out as quickly and easily as he thought, and they're going after him in a more serious manner. But either way,
that was his
I
first
would
offense,
imagine,
right?
Yes.
yeah,
Like his first thing. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
gonna go. That's gonna weigh heavy with the whole thing. Like he was a young kid. He made a stupid decision.
yeah,
It will, but there's two problems with what he did. One, there was illicit substances found in the vehicle, and he was in
that's
Texas.
just marijuana, though. They don't
Mary
test for that.
Jane.
Yes, but it was
what
in
state?
Texas.
That was in Texas, right?
But it was
It's
in
not legal.
Texas, and Texas is not particularly tolerant of drugs in vehicles, etc. In fact, they have I did some additional digging into Texas in general when it comes to violations of that nature. They are pretty aggressive when it comes to that stuff because they take a stance which is, we'll call it similar to my family's approach to it, who are all police officers, which is you allow it. You basically need to go almost slightly more aggressive to prove a point to say we will not tolerate the thing, to ensure that the safety of the citizenry in that area and in that state are, that they're protected. Like there's law-abiding citizens that expect to be able to get into their vehicles and not have to contend with, a group of young 20-somethings that are stoned and potentially going to kill them.
So I'll clap back on that just a little bit. Texas is kind of wild. I haven't been there in a while, but when I worked out there for a month in East Texas, and they had drive-through liquor stores where you could order a drink to go. And so I'm like, all right, it's cool. They'll crack a beer open for you while you're driving. But man, if you get caught with that joint, boy, you are going to the pen.
Well, you also got to look at it too. It's a border state, so they want to crack down on illegal narcotics coming into their state.
Correct. And so there's other incentives as well, but generally speaking, there's also a level of acceptance when it comes to alcohol in the general populace as well. And so I think that's something else to consider, which is also true. So generally speaking, I think that the league is doing the right thing, but I also do agree with you, DZ, which is, like it or not, these young players are going to be looked up to by other young men that are coming through high school and grade school. And, we all did the thing when we were playing a sport that we love, where we're like, look at me, mothers. I am so-and-so, I am this, I am that. Right. And these players need to be aware that there will be young children that will look up to them. And the last thing you want is some of these players.
You do not want to turn the game of football off to women right now. They are the mothers of these children, and that's who decides if their kids are playing this game. Correct. And who they buy their kids these jerseys. They go to the games, the whole nine. Like, so that's another thing I'm thinking about. How do they delicately dance around these issues?
Well, on the flip side of that, there's the other component here of this is Rice's first offense. It was certainly not a small one. So I guess if go big or go home. So he kind of took the whole Texas state motto to heart when he did this thing. But everything is bigger in the state of Texas. So, okay. But I think the challenge that you end up with what is kind of going on here is it is that delicate balance is there's a role model component. There's the money component, because this is not a good look for the league or the Kansas City Chiefs. I think we can all agree on that, full stop, period, right? But then on the other side here is at some point there's going to be a lingering component here, which is, why is he still playing when he did the thing? Like, it's not necessarily a matter of did he do the thing? Like, he basically had a smile and cheese moment for a few cameras. Like he was there. He's admitted he was there. Like, you're done at that point, right? So then the question is, at what point is this I would say basically favoritism, I think is probably the better word to use for it within the league, where you start getting into optic problems. So Jack, you hinted at the fact that, if he was playing for a different team, he would have been, quote unquote punished right away. And then on the flip side of that same coin, it was, but he's playing for the Chiefs, so therefore he wasn't, right? Like, and of course, right now, DZ, to your point, they're the NFL darlings at this moment because, Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift, 2 Super Bowls. They are potentially, there's the whole narrative and storyline this entire season is, can they three-peat? Can they three-peat? Mahomes being the best quarterback in the league. And guys, I don't care which team you're a fan of, that statement's true. So like it just is. And so, there's all of these things that I think all come into play. And I think that's where the balance comes in. And at this point here, the league is in this really, really weird and wonky spot, which is, let's say he's convicted. Does that really change a ton? I don't think so.
Not unless they
less public opinion
repeatedly with everybody.
Yeah, but okay, so I think this is actually an interesting conversation. Like this to me, I think is a super interesting conversation. I'd love to hear some comments in the chat on this. It's like, okay, publicly already, as we stand right now, let's like juxtapose like Ruggs versus this, right? Everyone knew what happened with Ruggs, and no one was surprised that he was like arrested right away and had punishment right away because of what happened and what occurred, right? We can all kind of agree to that. I think is fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what is the big difference between Rice? Now, obviously, he didn't kill someone, which, thank goodness and thank God that didn't happen, right? Like, I think we can also agree to that because there was certainly the potential that he could have legitimately killed someone given the footage we've seen. That was certainly a possibility. But he's on video. You've seen the details. He's admitted that he was there. And all of the other information has kind of come out and has been, I don't say copped to, but he certainly put out at least 2 different public statements about the details of that particular incident. So I guess what I'm getting at here is what optics could come out publicly that would be so dramatically different than where we are at now? Like, are we not just at this point delaying the inevitable? And then
you're essentially saying the NFL should just use their own judgment. Like, this is not a good look, so we'll take care of it and let him deal with it.
Yes, and I don't think you go to the conduct off the field for this one here. I think you just go conduct detrimental to the league and simply say, look, it has taken too long for us to get to this point. We don't think it is a good look for the league to let this thing linger and continue to potentially fester. Because, like, let's put it this way. If this lingers to week 9 and the Chiefs are on track to being a lock for the first seed or close to the first seed or something close to that, and Rice is having a good season, there's going to be an asterisk that's going to be on the Chiefs season right now if that happens, if Rice is playing well, because there's going to be a ton of people that are going to say, but Rice shouldn't even have been on the field because he should have been, like there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to make those comments. Now, I understand the other side. No punishment has come down. He hasn't been charged in the court of law, but I'm not even saying that they should be punishing him based on the legal outcome, because I think the legal outcome is going to kind of sort itself out, and I think he's going to deal with some stuff. He'll probably have a few fines. He might lose a vehicle because Texas state law would certainly support that potentially from occurring. But at the end of the day, I think this is the bigger issue here is conduct detrimental to the league and or disrespecting the shield. And I think that's I think that is where the punishment should be coming from, rather than, dude, you're a young kid, you decided to drive really fast. That was a stupid decision, but guess what? We hope that you've learned your lesson, but the real issue here is the damage that you've done to the shield in the league.
I mean, like I said earlier, it's a privilege to play in the league.
Yes.
There's I don't know how many other guys that would kill to be in that kid's position, you know what I mean? He just it didn't work out for them in one way or another. And, they watched that kind of happen. And if they just go a little slap on the hand, which they could because it's his first offense and they can put him through all these programs that they're probably partnered with, rehab, paying restitution, the whole 9. I get that part. But it's at the same time, it's like, it's not just him. There's many other players, it seems like it's a weekly occurrence. When is it enough? Like, Goodell needs to just be like, there's the 32 owners, the whatever you want to call them, Like, boom, no. Our rosters are 53 people for a reason. You have practice squads for a reason. Like, this shit happens. No, like at least minimum certain amount of games gone, no questions asked.
Well, it's like Goodell is like, like the government right now, the federal government, and all the 32 owners are like the states. But right now with Goodell, he's like like a dictator. He controls everything. He like picks and chooses his battles. So Richie, you were gone, but we were talking about John Gruden. I mean, how does he try to work something on? Oh, I want a moderator, but the moderator is going to be controlled by me. How is that a fair process? If anything, the NFL should have like a committee that is not tied to the NFL in any shape or form. And they should be like, helping the NFL make judgments of like, okay, what should the penalty be? What is fair? What is right?
NFL referees, but we know that's not.
Yeah,
well, we know the NFL referees.
If something like that, we'd have too many of the league's dark secrets, come to light. You got to have control over it all.
I mean, there's a reason why the NFL is registered as an entertainment industry and not a sport. And I think it has to do with a lot of this stuff.
It's power.
It's day-to-day
straight
stuff.
Power.
It's a massive bit. I mean, NFL essentially is becoming a religion in our country. You know what I mean? Like,
well, it is a religion. We're all here right now. We're all preaching to the choir.
We're talking
preaching the gospel.
Exactly. We pray to the football gods on Sunday. Go to the church and then football gods.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's kind of interesting. It's like we will move church around to go watch our game before we'll go to church.
Oh yeah. Yes, we will. Yeah.
So I did hear the Gruden thing there, Jack, and that's a whole that in and of itself is that's a fascinating one, which I am disappointed that more information hasn't come out on, because that is as a non-Raiders fan, that was head scratching to me too, that there was just there's still a huge question mark on that, and I was quite disappointed with the decision that came out from that.
It's like the NFL had their own little CIA thing going on, man.
They did.
Wow.
Oh yeah, just trying to take down who they want to take down.
Wow, man.
So I thought that was a super interesting show where we dove into all the different training camps and also covered some additional information like the Rashid Rice situation.
I'm sure Alex is tired of hearing about it.
Pardon me?
I would like it to just be done, like like I said, I would honestly prefer to know going into the season, okay, we got to make it through weeks, 1 through 6, 1 through 8 without Rice, rather than, what I think's more likely going to happen now is we get into week 10, 12, and he's suspended for the back half of it.
Well, it's going to happen. He's going to come back for like the last 3 games. So that way he's nice and fresh for the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, with that little tidbit, which is where I was thinking the league was going to go to, just to really just rub salt in the wound for the rest of us. We're going to end the show there, guys. I thought that was a fantastic show. We covered a lot of ground today. We're going to get a lot more information on players, camp, injuries. Hopefully not, knock on wood. But it is a contact sport, and let's be honest,
things do happen.
Stuff is going to happen. So, ladies and gentlemen, until next week, where the West Side is the best side, this is the Wild Wild West podcast.
Shout out DZ.
And
thank you, DJ.
Loved having you on again. Love having you in the chat as well.
Peace. Awesome,
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the flame out. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle. Wait a minute, work hard.